Thank you so much for being here today. Today we're going to discuss how one destination is proving their impact and illustrating how the market might perform if there wasn't a DMO. For those who don't know me, my name is Carol Johnson, and I have the privilege of partnering with some of the most beautiful open space destinations in the world, which include the state of Florida and the Caribbean. And my day-to-day work is supporting destinations in their quest to welcome visitors. Since the onset of COVID-19, my acquired specialty has been working with destinations to use robust data, not only to target the right audience for them, but also to perform and have performance that is the centerpiece of every campaign. So in the next 15 minutes, we're going to talk a little bit about that. I don't know if everyone recognizes this guy or if you've seen someone like that in your past, but there is an encounter that I had about 20 years ago, something that is etched in my mind forever. And it was an encounter I had with a legislator at a meeting. And I was a publisher of a niche company at that point in time, maybe a little greener than I was today, but we started a conversation. And we started talking, and we talked about advertising. And basically he said, I don't know why blah, blah, blah destination needs to advertise. People already know that destination. The attractions do all the work for them. Every family in the world comes to them. We can use that money for something else. Well, as my mother taught me, don't talk back. Thought a little bit, collected my thoughts, and I said, well, by that logic, why do some of the most recognized brands in the world spend billions of dollars on advertising? Of course, this was before Google put their big foot in travel, and 20 years ago, that may have been a logo for Coca-Cola or McDonald's. And in those days, we didn't have e-tourism summits like we have today or data sharing, but we did have some data to share. Regardless of the data that we have today and years ago, I don't think I was ever going to convince this guy that advertising was the right area for his destination. So it all started in 2016. Tripadvisor got onto something called MEI, that fancy acronym for Media Effectiveness Insights. At that time, that only scratched the surface of what we can do and what was possible. The goal was to measure the difference in behaviors of travelers who were visiting destination pages and what they did once they saw the advertising on those pages. In addition to it, we were also able to search and look at people who did not see the destination's advertising. So it wasn't difficult at that point in time, but the difference was we were using our own first-party data. We, at that point in time, had 2/3 of all the audiences on our platform. And then we had insights from a content standpoint. So we were able to look at what lodging, what attractions, and what restaurants were performing on our platform. And the input and output was pretty simple. There was a lift in page views, and there was a lift in clicks. And we know them as lookers and clickers. Points of interest views, estimated direct bookings, we were able to see all of that. We were also able to see how the number of points of view or views per user increased as a result of seeing the advertising. We also were able to look at the page view rate, the attraction page view rate for each of those categories. So although the performance varied by destination, what we did see over time was that campaigns could be affected by various factors. They can be affected by type of targeting you're doing. They can be affected by the share of voice that you have. They can also be affected by the messaging itself, your flight length, and the story. But overall, our stories began to look the same in that travelers who saw the destination's advertising consumed more content on the platform. They consumed more content, visited more pages, viewed more DMO points of interest, anywhere from 1.5 to 2 times more than before. And at the end of the day, more importantly, they clicked and converted 2 times the amount of time when they saw the destination's messaging. Enter the Tripadvisor Insights Platform. So not only did we have COVID-19 introduced this spring or this past winter, but we also introduced the Tripadvisor Insight Platform. And it's been something that we've been working on for several years, but as you know, if you built a platform, it takes a long time to build a platform, and over time you continue to build on that platform. So as I mentioned earlier, we just scratched the surface with MEI, and while it would help us to use more of our data for you and our partners, we also knew that it could help a destination show what the difference it made when they were able to measure their advertising. So I'm sure you're familiar with a destination called Fort Worth, and Fort Worth is the city of cowboys and culture, and they surely have a character and personality of all their own. Well, Fort Worth is one of our partners, and that they've always been focused on what can we see in insights that are going to affect our actions on the platform itself. So what we do is to guide their marketing planning and optimization on Tripadvisor. We're able to use these insights to augment their performance, measure it, and provide a picture for those legislators or elected officials and stakeholders in the destination. So this is a rather busy slide here, but this is a rather busy platform. There are 5 different dashboards that we have here, with innumerable sub-dashboards that feed within to the 5 dashboards. Quickly, what we can do with these 5 dashboards is leverage the Tripadvisor platform for site trends. We can uncover opportunities for the business holders or your stakeholders in the attractions, lodging, and restaurant categories. We can keep a finger on the pulse as to what customers are doing and how satisfied they are with those points of interest or businesses. And then we can measure the lift of the direct efforts on the campaign with economic impact insights. At the end of the day, we also have machine learning here. And machine learning is much more intelligent than all of us here in the room. It's a little scary, but with machine learning, we're able to identify a set of competitors' insights on the Tripadvisor's platform and see how your destination performs against those competitors. So let's take a top-level view at the 5 dashboards. This is the very first one, or the basic one, called Site Trends. And Site Trends is basically a baseline trends of all the businesses on the platform itself. So you're able to see the top source market who are looking at that content, the time they're looking at that content, and then opportunity markets where you can actually increase your performance or increase your investment towards those markets, or those destinations that may not be responding to your message for whatever reason in a time of COVID-19. So one example of using this baseline trends is this illustration up top here. And I mentioned lookers and clickers before, and the top illustration here are those top lookers on the platform looking at Fort Worth content. And as you can see, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Missouri are doing really, really well. But when you look at those who are clicking to book, we see that Texas, Georgia, Louisiana are converting. So we look at this data and say, well, why is it that they are interested in the destination, but they are not clicking to book? And you can use this data in many different ways to form your marketing campaigns. You can look at this and say, maybe we take some money out of Oklahoma, or maybe we put some money back into Oklahoma. So the second side of this platform is what we call the location and property. And this dashboard is a separate view that looks at your top locations within the destination by source market, and that could be by market country, that could be by region of the country, and then that also can be by city. And we take a deep dive into the actual points of interest within there and identify the top 50 restaurants, top 50 attractions, and top 50 lodgings within the platform itself. So one way Fort Worth was using this platform through Tripadvisor was actioning the top attractions by source market. So not everyone is relying totally on the US, although the majority of us are. Fort Worth also looks to Mexico for some of its traffic, and they realize that those in Mexico are looking at different content on the platform than those that were residing in the USA. So they're able to take this data and drill down and change their messaging by maybe addressing the attractions that are of interest to that audience in Mexico, or they're also able to identify businesses that are doing really well by the consumers and use them in their advertising. The third one, dashboard, is a powerful tool in ratings and reviews. And for those of you who have followed Tripadvisor over the last 20 years, you know that's where we made our mark, was with the user-generated content and the actual real reviews from everything to hotels, to restaurants, to attractions, now airlines, and so on and so forth. And this particular dashboard provides some granular data on those businesses. So look at Fort Worth here and look at this baseline trends of their average traveler rating, then there's an accommodation rating, there's an average attraction rating, and an average restaurant rating. Well, we know on Tripadvisor a 5 bubble rating is a perfect score. And right here in Fort Worth, we see that the restaurants are a little bit lower than the other accommodation sectors. So you can use this data to make some business decisions and training decisions, and maybe the restaurants need a little bit more training on how to manage reviews. We can also know from this that there may be an area where instead of relying on restaurants, maybe there's a need here to concentrate more on accommodations. So the last one here, or the second to last, is the media impact. And everyone who's in this business, whether it's an agency, a DMO, a stakeholder, we all know that insights are vital to how your advertising is working. And the data allows someone like Fort Worth here to see the downstream actions that exposed travelers take as a result of seeing the advertising, how long the post-exposure content continues to influence their actions. And we can dig into a wide range of insights from clicks to books over time here. So in this excerpt, Fort Worth can see that overall their advertising's driving a significant amount of post-exposure content. However, it also reveals that on the restaurant side, unexposed travelers are actually engaging in the content, suggesting that there may be an opportunity there. Last but not least is the holy grail for destinations, which is our economic impact. And this is where the dollars and cents that destinations invest deliver revenue to the community. And we're able to answer the question here, how much money would we leave on the table if there wasn't a destination aggressively marketing itself to prospective visitors, or if we listened to that legislator earlier today who said we don't need to advertise? So here it is. It starts with a view into the direct economic impact influenced by Fort Worth's investment. And in this view, Fort Worth can be seen and see the difference in the impact between the ad-exposed visitors, which are the green and orange rows here, compared to the total impact of all visitors on the top row. So this data is presented in two ways. There's a foreign economic impact, and there's also a domestic economic impact. And then there's also areas for hotels and attraction revenue as well. And the beautiful thing about this whole slide is this sector down here on the right-hand side that showed, with Fort Worth's investment on Tripadvisor, we impacted 29% of the total amount of revenue that happened on Tripadvisor. If you look at the domestic impact here, you'll see that it's a little bit higher at 30%, but still very strong. So narrowing down into that domestic view, we're able to look at this a little bit further to find out that they're reaching 30% of all the visitors, and they're driving nearly 11% ADR. So this in itself is not the data that we usually see on Tripadvisor. This data actually came from late 2019 and went through June of this year. And we all know we were all gated at one point in time. There wasn't a lot of travel that was going on at that point in time. There wasn't a lot of advertising that was going on. And you can see by the lower green shadings here at the end here where, you know, the advertising was sort of non-existent here, but needless to say, we still had some very good results for it. Because Tripadvisor only has direct access to lodging and attraction bookings, we rely on our partnership with Oxford Economics to fill in the gaps here and tell a more comprehensive story for a destination. And in this particular view, you're seeing a total economic impact over the period for Fort Worth that we just mentioned, which was late Q4 into mid-June of this year. And here we see the total scale here, or total economic impact was $135,000 for the $135 million, sorry, for the destination itself, which is pretty sensible, and it's a great number to use to prove your investment. And Oxford Economics also gives us the added look into transportation and other categories that we don't have the ability to look at, but we know are a part of tourism, you know, retail, food and beverage, transportation. And last but not least, this happens to be one of my favorite because it's really unique and it allows Fort Worth and our partners to be able to put all of the pieces together and monitor performance against its competitive set. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, this is machine learning, and this is an understanding of not only what the loyalists on the platform who are looking at that content about Fort Worth are doing, but also what are these users doing when they're looking at the competitor, and what is the overlap in between the competitors and the actual destination itself. So let me get a little bit granular as we get to the end here. This particular side-by-side comparison shows that Fort Worth definitely has a higher ADR than the competitive set. The attraction bookings is a little bit longer, and they're staying a little bit more. So you can see granularly how they compare to the competition. And last but not least, in this view, there is an enviable position in that Fort Worth can say, oh, we are ranking higher than the competition when it comes to our overall rankings. Our accommodations, attractions, and restaurants are doing better. So with anything data related, there's always a caveat, right? And although the news is here and all the data reviewed looks very, very positive, there is always data that is not so good. And there is data that may be shocking to us, but also may be impactful and create an opportunity for those in the future. So without further ado, that is the end of the presentation today. I think I'm on time here, maybe a little bit over, but that's the end of the presentation. And thank you so much for allowing us to be here and for coming out today.